Hi, I'm Ben from White Label. I'm joined here with David. Today we're talking about cybersecurity and why that's so important, especially for MSPs, given the amount of data and information we've got access to. So, David, why is it so important for MSPs to be cybersecurity conscious these days?
I think what you have to bear in mind, the companies we're looking after, their their company is based on their data, the information that they're holding about themselves. They might also be holding information about other companies as well. So lots of very sensitive information. In the worst case scenario, probably their biggest fear is things like getting hacked, losing information. Um, I can imagine sort of managing directors going to sleep every night, sort of worrying over the worst case scenarios that could ever be, and the consequences that could flow from that. So the fact that they're trusting us with that massive responsibility is something that us as an MSP, as White Label, we need to always keep at the forefront of our minds, and really make sure our processes are doing as much as we can to make sure their information is as safe as possible.
I suppose as the MSPs, as the providers for this support, we are the first line of defence when it comes to those risks.
Exactly. It could be something as simple as somebody ringing up for a password reset for an email account, for example, wanting to hack into somebody's account. I mean, to something more sophisticated, trying to hack into a server, for example. And I think that's the trick, is to understand that the potential breaches are not always the massive ones that can cause a big issue, because just providing a password to a third party, a hacker, whoever it is, to get into somebody's email account can just set off a whole chain of events for that person. It could be a director, whatever, for that company. And so for our agents taking those kind of first line calls, it is absolutely paramount that they understand the importance of the processes that have been set out by those companies, and also the internal processes that we have as well, to make sure we are following the agreed processes between us and those companies, to make sure every correct procedure is followed.
You mentioned password resets. We saw last year MGM Resorts and Caesar's Palace get hacked by a really, really simple social engineering method.
Yeah.
Someone called up the help desk, they asked for a password reset, that password was given, and as a result, they lost millions. I think that alone outlines how important it is having some trust in your service provider,
Yeah.
that they're able to keep your data secure.
Yeah, and I think I can give good sort of personal experiences with that, because I started as a first line engineer, and your role is to help people. People are ringing you up asking for support, and you're keen to provide the support as quickly, efficiently as possible. And a password reset is one of the most simple forms of help we can provide a customer. So it can seem like a quick, easy win. Get it done. Get it through the system as quick as possible. Person can log back in again. Job done. So it can often be. I can understand why hackers might choose sometimes a more sort of primitive, so to speak, way of hacking, such as ringing up the first line support for a password reset, because they're aware they might be lucky and get through to someone who is maybe new, who is or maybe someone who's not quite clear on the procedures, or the worst case scenario for us, sort of more in a management position, somebody that's not actually following the procedures, and for them, they might think that they might basically get lucky, and that's what's happened in these scenarios. We often hear the phrase "be proactive and not reactive" when it comes to security, How would you describe or unpack what that means exactly?
Absolutely. So, reactive support is when you are reacting to a problem that's already occurred. You are reacting to the event that has already happened and you are picking up the pieces, essentially. You're always on the back foot trying to fix what has already happened. With proactive support, you are making sure those processes are in place before it's even happened, and most of the time to stop it even happening in the first place.
And how can you reassure perhaps potential customers what we do at White Label to be that proactive customer rather than a reactive customer?
Absolutely. So it's very important for us to make sure our agents are trained up to a very high standard, that they are security aware when they're taking these calls, and they are essentially fearing the worst. We work with a lot of MSPs that have their own processes and their own security developments in place as it is. It's important for us to follow those processes and make sure we are still acting as an extension of that service provider, while in the back of our minds having our own security training.
Can you give examples of how we, um, as White Label, are striving to keep up with industry standards, so that prospective customers can have complete confidence in us?
We've got a proven reputation that we can be trusted, and that we can handle this data appropriately. We've recently gone out and got our Cyber Essentials Plus certifications. We're undergoing several ISO certifications as well to make sure as a company we can be trusted and we can securely handle that data. We work with over 60 different MSPs every day. What can you pick out from some of those industry leading service providers that are some really good practices that maybe some other ones could make use of?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because on the help desk it can be frustrating, in White Label, that you have, as you said, such a variety of approaches, particularly to security, which you would probably find a bit bizarre in a way, because you would expect, companies to value their own security, as much as we would value it. But as good examples, we have customers with very clear processes, even for something as basic as a password reset. So that could be that it requires authorization from a particular line manager or whoever is in a position of authority. Again, it can be frustrating for that initial customer on the phone, because they want a quick resolution to their problem. And as an agent, I found that difficult myself when I first started. The customer's saying, "Oh, I just want a password. Can't you just do it?" And reminding yourself that there are these really important processes to follow, is a bit of an education for someone going into this industry. But to get back to the idea of how I would compare the experiences of different MSPs, it still boggles me to this day that we have so many, again, that anybody could ring in, ask for a password reset, and there are no steps in place to know whether that person is that person. And that's all the way down to starting, let's say, from a receptionist in a hotel, all the way up to a managing director in a big company. And both of those calls are treated the same, in that we believe the person is who they're saying they are, and we action the request accordingly. Whereas other MSPs who have much better procedures, it's so much easier and so much more kind of comforting for us, knowing that we are following procedures that we are, as ourselves, would follow internally. So there can be a little bit of a frustration there working with some providers.
I think that's the difference between a healthy MSP and maybe a not so healthy MSP, is that standardization across the board. So ensuring that, you know, every single customer that is in contact with them is given that same level of support, is being used with the same tools, and that makes it, easy for any agent to come on and help them in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, I mean, because you do a lot of onboarding, Ben, do you ever get prospective customers asking for your guidance, your expertise on these issues? Do you ever get the sense that they're not too sure themselves of what they're doing sometimes, and that's why they're coming to us to ask for help in a sense.
Absolutely, and I think we're in such a good position to be able to provide that help. The fact that we support and we see the tools of dozens and dozens of service providers, we are in a good position to be able to offer that support and that advice and say, you know what, these processes aren't quite up to industry standard.
Yeah, and that's why I think so many people are attracted by white label, because if they see a successful, thriving company like ourselves with, as you said, over 60 clients and growing constantly, as I know on the help desk, um, that is evidence in itself that we know what we're doing. And I think there may be companies that may be failing, MSP providers that are maybe failing or looking for expertise, and that reassurance comes from us with the expertise that we've spoken about here, but also in the evidence of the amount of customers that we successfully support and the fact that that is constantly growing.
It can be very easy for service providers and companies in general to get stuck in their ways and continue doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Recognizing room for growth and changes in processes to keep up to date with industry standards is really important.
And what's like the balancing act, because you have more sort of more contact or more direct contact with MSPs on the onboarding process and later on. If you're sensing that they can improve in areas, or it might be even more obvious than just a few areas, is there a conflict inside you of how you approach that with them? If you think that your expertise can improve their systems, or how do you sort of approach that? Because it can be quite sensitive, I guess.
Absolutely. Our goal is always to be an extension of their help desk, of their company. So if there's ideas that we might have or, criticism that we can provide to help improve them, it's only going to help us in turn. So most people are very open to receiving that kind of criticism and that advice.
Yeah, that's really positive because nobody likes to be, in a sense, told what they're doing is wrong, so to speak. But we're looking at it more from the aspect of improving things. As you said, that idea of standardization, if we know what works and we've got evidence of that with multiple other MSPs, we're looking to get other companies on board with that so that our agents have that standardization as well, that we're treating every call as best as possible the same, even though there will be some slight differences there.
So there was a couple of really interesting points there surrounding the security that MSPs are providing. So here's a challenge for some of the MSPs out there. See if you can get a password reset or even a password from your help desk. I think if you can, there's a certain flaw there. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, find out why we're trusted by so many other MSPs around there.